The debate just ended. There was exactly one question about election reform. It came from Melissa in California. It was a great question about standardizing a national ballot, but that was just about it. And there was only time for Bill Richardson to answer the question. No other candidate addressed election reform. There was one question on it, even though America ranks behind 80% of the countries in the world in voter turnout. So right now, I'm headed up to the spin room to try and get some real answers. Yeah, I want to ask you a question. How come there weren't more questions about election? I mean, obviously there were.
We got one about elections, so
right,
that was pretty good.
One question and one response of 30 seconds about election reform in a country where voter turnout is behind 80% of all the countries.
We had a question about election reform, which was pretty good.
And you hope to address it further? And then
I hope so. It needs to be addressed, but we had to pick questions. That one got in. It was good that it got in. There were a lot of questions that didn't get in.
So what's going on, everybody? I actually tracked down and found the one election reform question, the presenter of the one election reform question in the debate. That's really exciting. I'm totally pumped up. I was a little disappointed because election reform was only given your question,
like
and Bill Richardson was the only one to be able to answer it. So, first of all, tell me what your name is. Tell me, why did you decide to ask the question about election reform?
My name is Melissa, and I'm not really, despite what I'm doing right now, a FaceTime kind of person. I'm more about organization and logistics, and I really believe that having a firm foundation logistically, you can't exist without having a firm foundation logistically, and the kind of mistakes that are happening on, every 4 years, every 2, depending on what kind of election you're voting in, it's just ridiculous, and how can you call it serious when it's so flawed? I feel really passionate about it because I'm nitpicky like that. It's something, honestly, that's bothered me since before I was able to vote, since I was like 12 or 13 years old. I remember my mom coming home and complaining that it was really complicated. I remember my friends' parents coming home saying, I got off work so late I couldn't go. It's really been something that has bothered me for a long time, so I felt now is the time to ask.
Were you bummed out that there wasn't more time for response to that question?
Totally bummed out, and the thing is, I know that the federal government doesn't regulate voting standards. It's statewide government that does that. I was kind of hoping to hear someone say that just because it is that way doesn't mean it needs to be that way.
Anything in particular other than, you talked about nationally standardized ballot. Anything else that comes to mind to you that you think would make it easier? For you personally? Or?
You are my favorite person for asking this question right now. Part of me, and I don't know how I feel about this, really wants to extend the voting period from 1 day to maybe 3 days or every other day for 6 days.
People have talked about 15 or 30 days.
Whatever gets people out there to cast their vote. And you can make the argument that because you're expanding the amount of time people have to vote, they're going to be lazy and you're going to get the same voter turnout. But you know what? At least you're trying something different, and at least you're taking a different approach. The fact that it's so broken and we haven't fixed it doesn't say much for our voting system.
What do you think people should do if they want to speak out on this issue?
It's difficult to say. I've been on YouTube for like a month and a half, and here I am at this amazing convention that's like a lifetime dream for me, and I'm 23. Find the opportunities in normal everyday things, I suppose, and just go with it. And I know it sounds cheesy and very like Jiminy Cricket or whatever, but if you want to do it, just do it. And if you want to make your voice heard, just do it.
And log on to whytuesday.org.
That'll help.
Cool.